So let's move on to some of the fun stuff, the playoffs. And let's start off with the flop of Florida.
That's a good. I like it. The flop, the Florida flop. That's what it should be. The Florida flop.
Well, it was the Battle of Florida, and so
the flop of Florida. Okay, I get it. Yeah. Okay.
So that was where I picked the wording, the order of the wording. But I'm sure that this will be coming out in Substack soon. But so perfect time to plug kencampbell.substack.com. Check it out. Just wrote a long article about Nazem Kadri yesterday, and which was very good. I very much enjoyed it. And so subscribe to the Substack for Ken's writing. And of course, you can get this podcast directly in your inbox. If you prefer to listen to podcasts over Apple Podcasts, please give us a subscription and a review. Always good. And if you only like listening to us for about 8 to 10 minutes at a time, then check us out on YouTube, where this all comes out as little clips, little sound bites. And of course, check out the Hockey Podcast Network, which we are affiliated with. The flop of Florida, the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Florida Panthers. Give me your initial thoughts.
To me, it was the closest comparison I could make to the way that Tampa Bay Lightning played in that series was the Canadian Olympic team in Sochi.
Oh yeah,
that's like that. It was that dominant, and so much so that when you can remember and you can describe in your mind's eye each one of the goals that the goalie gave up in that series, you know it's dominant, right? Like 3 goals, 3 goals against a team that was an offensive juggernaut in the regular season. Yeah, I mean, I think I just don't know that the Florida Panthers ever got over their case of the yips that they had in the first round.
Yeah, against the Capitals.
And they were just completely unprepared for what was coming at them. And I mean, obviously Tampa was much, much better in round 2 than they were in round 1 against Toronto. Vasilevsky was better. They just, and I mean, now it's to the point where, like, why do they even bother playing the third period if Tampa's up by a goal? They just don't give you anything. They give you nothing, like nothing.
I mean, they beat the New York Islanders 1-0 last year in Game 7 of the conference final.
Yeah, they don't give you anything, and they are really, really hitting their stride right now. Like, I look at the other series, and I mean, Carolina's good, but
Carolina has not hit what I would consider their stride.
They haven't, for sure.
Yeah.
And but like, I look at that series, and I'm like, I don't see either one of these teams being able to beat Tampa in the conference final. I just don't see it, especially now that they're going to be rested, and they're, I don't know what this means for Braden Point, whether or not he's done for the year, but I mean, Tampa is absolutely and unequivocally rolling right now. And if it is Colorado and Tampa, I think that'll be a great series. But I mean, how do you bet against the Tampa Bay Lightning right now? How do you do it? Like,
I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would say that, like,
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say anything important. Go ahead.
I would say that hockey is a sport that, unlike other sports, the ability for one team to beat the next team is much higher. In the sense that we've seen teams have multiple players have career years and they go on an absolute tear, even though it's not actually a good team. If you look at the career averages of these players, they didn't put together a good team. Then they make the general manager, look like a genius. But so there's so much involved in winning that, you made the point that you couldn't see either Carolina or New York beating the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I guess what I would say is you're absolutely right, because, you find teams that manage to get their way onto a roll. But the fact is that Tampa Bay is just already rolling. It's just, they are firing on all cylinders. It's absolutely outrageous to watch the Tampa Bay Lightning play right now.
This is one where the championship pedigree is really showing. I mean, it's It is. It's stunning, actually, how clinical they are, how good they are, how solid they are at every position.
Yeah.
How they've learned to straddle the rule book like perfectly.
Yeah.
And the thing that's most impressive is, okay, so you want to grind it out defensively and play a 1-0 game? Okay, that's fine. We're good.
Yep.
Well, you want to score? Yeah. Well, we've got some pretty good players, so we can do that too. You want to get down and dirty? You want to get down and dirty and play in the alley and make it a borderline violent series? Okay. Yeah, we'll do that too. Just throw at us anything you want. And you know what? We're going to end up dictating the terms of engagement here, not you.
Yeah.
And so I mean, did I expect Florida to put up a better fight? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Buffalo traded Sam Reinhart for a reason.
Right.
He did nothing. Yeah.
Calgary traded Sam Bennett for a reason. The other Sam. Who did nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Sergei Bobrovsky has probably in 4 years hasn't stolen a playoff game. He's been okay, and I think he was okay in this series.
Yeah, he was fine.
But he didn't steal anything. He didn't steal any games. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he didn't let in any.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say any, but he didn't let in very many what you would call a soft goal or an easier goal. He played about what you would hope that a playoff goalie would play.
Well, and for that team, he shouldn't have had to play any better for that team. You know what I mean?
Like
Darcy Kemper doesn't have to be as good as Jake Ottinger. You know what I mean?
That's a fair point.
When you've got that kind of team in front of you, you don't have to be that otherworldly thing. You just have to be good. And he was okay, but he didn't steal. He didn't even come close to stealing any games.
So I want to bring up two quick things about this. One of them, I hate to be constantly referencing the competition, but on 32 Thoughts, Jeff Merrick was talking about relating the Tampa Bay Lightning to the New York Islanders of the 80s. Yeah. And I was thinking about a story that I heard. I don't remember where I heard it, but it was shortly after Mike Bossy passed away. And the story was that the Islanders beat the Oilers, right? In the playoffs.
Yeah.
On their way to one of their cups. And,
it was the last
Mike Bossy.
It was the last one. It was the fourth one.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mike Bossy said something to the effect of, step in line, young fellas. It's not your turn yet. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what this looked like, where it's just like you've got this team that's just winning. They're just a bunch of winners.
Yeah.
And then they go up against the Florida Panthers, who, think that they have it, and they've gotten, that's the kick in the pills.
Dusted.
They got dusted.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I would take that analogy to the New York Islanders even another further step. The years the New York Islanders won the Stanley Cups, their 4 Stanley Cups, I'd have to check. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, but I don't think they ever finished first overall any of those years.
Well, there was the President's Trophy curse. So
yeah.
Curse.
Well, you know what? I don't know that it's that much of a curse, to be honest with you. You still put yourself in the best opportunity to win it. I think the President's Trophy, the team that finished first overall wins it about 25% of the time. That's still better than any other placing that there is. So I don't know that it's that much of a curse, but I do know that that down the stretch and at certain points in the season, I thought the Tampa Bay Lightning were playing at 80%, maybe
politely.
80%, and they've learned to pace themselves, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, Tampa Bay Lightning, man, with the Florida Panthers, here comes my little troll moment. come on, guys. Even the Montreal Canadiens took a game off of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
Right? And like two of those guys had to retire after the series was done. But even to that, the other thing that I wanted to mention was, how often in Montreal land it was mentioned how you can never win with a $10 million goalie. Now, Vasilevsky is just shy of $10 million.
Right.
But for all intents and purposes, like he's a $10 million goalie, right?
Yeah.
You're really splitting hairs here. You're not even talking about a league minimum contract in terms of the price difference between the two of them. And just their roster construction, their team construction has just been so smart and so calculated. It's really, really something else. And it goes to show that you can win it with a $10 million goalie. It even, if anything, very much behooves you to have a $10 million goalie. But you do have to indeed build a team around that $10 million goalie.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, Tampa's been, given a master class at that. Right. They
really have. And the thing that I think is odd is that I don't know if it's that nobody has tried to duplicate their blueprint, but rather that their blueprint has been so unique that nobody has been able to try it in a way that resembles the original. Right. It's like that. Yeah. It's like that Simpsons meme where Homer's got that box of the barbecue pit and he's like, "Oh, this perfect barbecue pit." And then he like looks at the pile of garbage that he built and he's like, "Why won't mine look like that?" Well, it's very true, right?
One of the reasons why theirs doesn't look like that is because they don't have Al Murray as their director of scouting. I would argue that there's one of these years he should get their most valuable player award. Because he's the guy who's finding the Braden Points in the late rounds. He's the guy who's finding Ross Colton. He's the guy who's finding Yanni Gourde. He's the guy who's finding, Tyler Johnson and all these guys. Like him and his staff are the guys who are finding those players and drafting them. And then, of course, the development process is second to none. So, that's how you're able to keep salaries down. You can afford to lose your whole third line and replace them, move Ross Colton up from the fourth line and then get yourself a Brandon Hagel and a Nick Paul and away you go, and is it as good as Yanni Gourde, Barclay Goudreau and Blake Coleman? No. Yeah. No. But it's good enough, it's definitely good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, finding role players that fit their system perfectly so well that they don't even look like role players anymore. They just that Brandon Hagel trade that Brisebois made. Like, I'm not sure he doesn't make that trade anyways. Like, forget about the trade deadline. Forget about replacing guys. Like, if I'm Brisebois, I'm like, okay, well, I can give up these picks that are going to be really late picks anyways. And I'm getting a sure asset for another year at least. Something I know, something that plugs a hole. And you know what? I mean, okay, so we don't have a first round pick. Big deal. We'll just, Al Murray will just find somebody in the third, or he'll just find an unrestricted free agent out there that nobody else has put much stock in, Yeah. So final question on this series, because of course everything has to relate to the Toronto Maple Leafs at some point or another, right? You know what the question is. The question,
and it's a dumb question, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Have I given you any other kind of question, Ken? Yeah, but I mean, like, what does this mean for Toronto Maple Leaf fans and the team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the way that the fact is that the Florida Panthers were considered here and the Toronto Maple Leafs were considered all the way down here. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would argue that it wasn't as much that Tampa was having trouble finding their stride in the playoffs as the fact that the Leafs were making it very difficult for them to find their stride in the playoffs. And so I think that once you put this Florida Panthers series as your context, I'd say that the Leafs had themselves a heck of a series. I thought that they had a good series, But I'd say that they had themselves a heck of a series.
Yeah, they did. They did. But the Florida Panthers were never up 2-1 in the series. They were never up 3-2 in the series. They were never in this series. The Leafs had this series. They had it. They show up in game 4, up 2-1 with a chance to take a stranglehold on the series, and they put out their third line and their 5-6 defensemen for the first shift and get scored on in the first minute of the game. And then look awful the entire game,
Yeah.
So like, to me, it's like that's a bit not revisionist history, but now people are saying, oh, well, I guess we should blow up the Florida Panthers too, right? Well, no, you shouldn't blow them up, and you shouldn't blow up the Toronto Maple Leafs either. Like, nobody's advocating for them to blow things up. What I'm advocating for
is advocating for that.
Yeah. Like I'm not saying blow up the Toronto Maple Leafs. What I'm saying is you cannot come back next year with the same president, the same GM, the same coach, and the same 4 core players. Like that, changing one of those isn't blowing anything up, That's what I'm saying. And, do the Florida Panthers need to be blown up? No, but it's obvious that they're missing some pretty key elements there that need to be changed, And they haven't gotten it. And a lot of people were comparing them to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They don't have a lot of guys who, really were, battle tested and had been part of long playoffs runs. They got shot at the deadline, but yeah.
Yeah. And with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're in the enviable position that I think that the biggest impact change that they could make is also the easiest change to make, which is the coach.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The easiest person to change has always been the coach, right? In professional hockey. And in the Toronto Maple Leafs case, I think that actually is the right move, not just a scapegoat move. And I'd give it a shot with another coach. But anyways.
or you could. JT Miller's getting traded this summer.
Yeah, you think that's a pretty much guarantee?
Yeah, JT Miller's gone in Vancouver. Like, they're going to trade him.
Yeah.
Like, can you think of a player that the Leafs could use more than a guy like JT Miller? Like, that's exactly the kind of player they need, right?
Yeah.
So, do you consider trading William Nylander for JT Miller? You save You save $1.7 million on the cap next year if you make that trade. So you got a bit of cap breathing room. Nylander's under contract for 1 more year after that, and then he's an unrestricted free agent. So really, you've got you're basically trading a guy that's got 1 year left for a guy that's got 2 years left. And you're filling an enormous hole in your lineup.
Yeah.
I think you definitely look really long and hard at making a trade like that, in my opinion.
Yeah.